All right, so we've got a bit of a jam-packed session. And just for some quick introductions, today we're going to talk about building an introduction to project management and creating a project initiation charter. My name's Priya. I'm a CRO and co-founder of Strategic Thinking Systems. I have a PhD in industrial organizational psychology. And if you're not familiar, we focus on the fuzzy front end of planning to help people with aspects of strategy and project planning and to collaborate in a single space to develop clarity. So we'll talk about what that looks like in the project planning space. And then at the end of this process, we'll show you how you can download your project charter. So that's me. Francis, if you want to introduce yourself, and then Ben.
So my name is Francis. I'm a technical founder of STS and of quite a few startups before that. I'm what they call a repeat offender.
Hmm.
Um, and I come from the space of process improvement in large corporations. And I've launched STS a few years ago thinking that competent AI was about to arrive. And then in 2022, ChatGPT. So here we are today.
All right. Ben, do you want to share a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Ben Clayton, and I'm the Chief Engagement Officer, and so I'm here really to support you on getting started and having success with STS. So if there's ever any questions, issues, comments, suggestions, this is what I'm here for. So you can reach out, and I'll put my email in the chat. But we're always available to help you get started and be successful on the platform. So excited you're here. Thank you.
All right. Nice to have you here.
Also,
Mhm.
2 years today was the first time that Ben and I met,
Oh,
and that led to everything else. So
special anniversary.
Oh, thank
Um, And we might have a little bit of a smaller contingent on the call today because if you are not familiar, we are doing a startup week in Vancouver and Web Summit. And so there's a lot going on in tech right now. So, and I don't think it's just here. So, Charlie, why don't you introduce yourself and take it away and we'll dive in.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Charlie Slaven. I'm out of Cincinnati, Ohio, and I've been doing projects of various sorts for about 50 years. I started out in accounting and finance and then moved to technology for better part of 20 years with GE and then a software company in Cincinnati. And then I moved into process engineering with the company called Kroger and been doing Lean Six Sigma, and now I've got my own company, and I'm an advisor to STS to help them with this journey into project management. So that's enough about me. We'll just go ahead and launch. This is actually the second phase of our work. We started this chartering a few weeks ago, so we'll just remind everybody after today, and Priya mentioned, you'll be able to build your own charters with a copy of these templates, but we're going to move into planning. And so there's two models. There's a predictive model, and there's also an agile model. And so when I get into planning, we will talk about the nuances between the two, and we'll be building boards that will support both of those models during the planning session. And you'll see in my next steps in the last slide, I'll talk about work breakdown structures and scheduling. So if we can get the scope right on projects and we can get the schedule right, we've got at least a reasonable chance to get the project planned properly, and we will do that. So predictive, waterfall, agile model, change driven, basically you've got 2-week sprints and 13-week releases of products. And most projects today have an element of agile in addition to the predictive model. So we're going to be going there. I just wanted to bring up this slide. Why do projects fail? I think either Priya or Ben mentioned that we were trying to get these projects started in a good manner. So inadequate project planning starts with day one with the charter, where the charter is pretty much, it's got to be authored by the sponsor. But most of the time, the project manager puts it together. He assigns the project manager, and then a project manager has a team that he pulls together, or he or she pulls together for the planning elements, and they start with a kickoff meeting. And the first document they look at is this thing called a charter. So this is my example of a charter with its components, and we've mapped this into a document that will be forthcoming. You'll see this in a prototypical manner, but after you've completed all these contents in these various lists within STS, you'll be able to also get your charter out to take a look at it. But if you've got additional fields that you use or less fields that you use, we'll show you how to modify the boards and the list so that we can get that done for you. Again, organizing, initiating, we use project charters. Let's get it going. And this will be, I'll copy this into the last slide for next steps. That's all the overview I've got. So I'm going to go right into the boards, to the board for this. And let me just pull that up, or
You want me to pull it up, Charlie, or?
yeah, go ahead, pull it up.
All right, 1 second.
Pull it up and share it. You're going to do some of the navigation here. I'll just talk about the content.
Okay, so you talk and you tell me where you need me to navigate, and we'll
All right.
go with that.
So, project charters. Again, we wrote up this context just as an example. But this context is going to drive all the other lists. So Priya, just start to scan over to your right, and you'll see that we've already covered in previous sessions, but if you need us to come back to it, fine. You know, sponsors, the project manager, the project scope. Just do a little deep dive in that scoping down there, in scope and out of scope. So those came out of the context. And all of these are enabled by AI, and STS has got multiple AI engines that it can look at, but we're mostly looking at GPT, the chat GPT one, but there's other ones that we could be using. Keep on scanning to the right and go to the top. As you can see here, we've got the background, the purpose and justification. Again, this is meant to say, sponsor, what do you want me to do in this project? So we're trying to get all the elements of the project identified before we even get our team together to plan it. But this is more than a water cooler or a coffee break discussion. These are the elements that are necessary so that we can achieve great success on our project by starting the right way. Purpose and justifications, keep scanning to the right. We got project objectives that we've extracted. And again, at the end of this, you're going to see how you can go into this template, put your current project context in there, and produce all these wonderful outputs. And it doesn't take a team of people to build this. It's you to do, and then you can go off and build the plans. We got assumptions and constraints. And Priya, did we get through all of those elements, those lists in the previous session?
I don't know. I can't recall. I think we made it all the way up to, hold on.
Yep.
We made it all the way up to the end of customer requirements, and we started high level work breakdown structure, but we've
Okay.
run a fair amount
All
of
right. So again, we've referenced these other lists in here, and you see them documented in the white paper. Okay, there it should be all checked. And then we use the AI General Assistant, which is, I believe, Priya, that is ChatGPT. Is that correct?
This is Chat GPT, but we have the option of changing the assistants. So we have
Yep.
several assistants here, general assistants, etc.
Right.
And then we like to use the director of project planning because that's what we're doing here.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll show you how to select the lists as well because so essentially to select lists, I've got recommended lists here, which you'll have
Yep.
access to this information as well.
Right.
But I'm just going to go through here, choose some assumptions and constraints, a little bit of the background. What
Yeah.
else do I have here? Customer needs, requirements, customers.
Context. Yeah. Customer needs, requirements, customers, the context.
Project context.
Yeah, got to have that in there. Yeah.
What else? Charlie?
Yep,
Detail?
those are good. Yeah,
Okay.
just execute it. No. And then for everybody that's on this webinar today, You can pick any of the lists that you think are going to influence this particular list. That's basically the idea, is get those to influence this list. Then it comes up and says, okay, these are the major milestones. I put in some dates. And again, you'll be able to model your project in this tool by just changing the context and changing the selection of those various lists. And we want to use the AI director of project planning, and we use ChatGPT to fill in. Maybe I didn't pre-think all the necessary components. I've done this for a long time, but you still may miss something, and AI will help us complete that. So just continue on to the right,
Okay.
and we'll go up here and say, okay, key stakeholders. Stakeholders, anybody that has a vested interest in this project, and we take into consideration all the various appropriate lists. And then we see, okay, we got stakeholders and roles. We got owners, employees, suppliers, the local community, the sponsor, the manager, and their various interests. What are they interested in? Financial returns, job stability and security, long-term partnerships. This is a pretty robust tool that allows you to create really great content, and this great content is going to make it into our formal charter that will basically read all these lists and produce a asset within STS that'll become the charter. And you too can do this for your project that maybe you're in the midst of one, and maybe you still got some questions about some of these elements. Well, feed it in here, let it give you some information, and you can double back in your next project meeting to say, okay, we didn't really address risk in this project, or requirements, or something else, and you could get it fleshed out using this tool. So it could be a great way to do a review of your project and its status, not just are we hitting the milestones, are we hitting our schedules, are we delivering each week something of value to the customer, but maybe this springs some additional ideas. Organizational goals, these are things that we're trying to do that's not necessarily in the scope of the specific project, but these are things that we want to accomplish. So if you drop down there and take a look at what we've come up, the goals are to establish a predictable, innovative product flow, sustained growth, enhancing customer value, improving efficiency. So there's a lot of goals in here that we could end up putting KPIs to and measure how well we're doing that during this project. Go to the next column. It is the project assurance. What project assurance means to us as project managers is, how do we know that the quality of the work that we're doing is excellent quality? So what are the assurance practices? Well, we're going to do status reviews. We're going to do key milestones reviews and track those over time. We're going to look at risk and say, is there any new risk that has hit us, or is there a risk that we have to respond to? Because it did hit us. We weren't able to mitigate it, minimize, or eliminate it. It now happened. What's going to be our response plan? Performance monitoring, compliance checks, all those types of things are in the area of project performance that impacts the ability of us to meet our, we'll call it the triple constraints of scope and schedule and budget, but also the assurances, the quality. You'll see in here we got communication planning, we got risk mitigation. That's usually the top 6. Now in project lifecycle, this allows you to say, oh, this is a hybrid project, this is a predictive only project, this is an agile project. So those are the kinds of things that show up in there. It says, okay, what's going to be our life cycle? And you're going to see how that dramatically changes once we get into the agile planning model of, as opposed to an agile basically says, we don't know 3 months, 6 months, 12 months down the road, but we're pretty sure we can basically carve out what we're going to do over the next 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, maybe even up to 13 weeks. 13 weeks is sometimes a long-term horizon. So in that next one, I think we've got risk management. So risk limits. Are we risk tolerant? Or are we intolerant? This thing can, we can develop and implement any scope you want, but it's got to be done on this date because maybe it's a legal requirement. So that would be a risk limit where we're intolerant of missing a date. Or you can do anything but hire people and exceed the budget because we don't have the money. We can't manufacture money like most governments do these days. We're going to have to live within the budget that we've set. And then the risk limit for quality, does it have to be precise, right down to this date on this scope element by these resources, or is there some variation of the quality of the scope that can be delivered on those days? One I use in projects sometimes, it'll say, what does clean mean? Well, it's got to be a clean environment. Well, does it be clean enough to basically manufacture something, or does it have to be clean enough for a surgical surface? Those are two different levels of quality that need to be established, maybe for some of the elements within the project. Going to the next one, we're talking about reviews and approvals. What are the reviews and approvals? Who has to approve it? On what dates? These are what we call toll gates within a project. When are those things going to be done? And who's got to approve it so we can move to the next? So the idea is to get your charter approved so you can move with confidence into your planning phase. And then once you get through your planning phase, you can move into execution with confidence. And those are all called toll gates. We've got elements, I think, of the communication plan. We got the project resources. What kind of resources? Resources is more than money and equipment and facilities. It's also starts to tie into our staffing model. What kinds of resources do we need there? At what level? We got a junior sustainability analyst, but it's a analyst 1. It's not a level 3 or 4 or 5. So, and then we say how many of those folks we need, because that's going to drive basically our estimated budgets, because we're going to put money against each of those resources, and then that'll tell us in the timeline when are we going to spend money on resources so that we can get this project accomplished. The next list is really about change process. So the only thing for sure in a predictive model for sure is that there's going to be changes. So how are we going to process those changes? Who has to approve them? How are we going to re-baseline maybe our schedules, our budgets, our resource plans, our quality plans? All those things may have to be adjusted based on the changes that we've accepted. Now in Agile, we expect changes all the time, but not within the 2-week sprint. The 2-week sprint should be frozen, but at the end of every week, we say, what lessons did we learn? Are we delivering at the velocity that we thought we were going to deliver or not? Maybe we have to change some of those parameters, and that may push out our end date. Again, maybe it's okay within this quarter to get 80% of what we need done. And that's in the change management arena. So going back into the next column to the right, after change, we got staff effort levels. So how much of each of these people were we going to use? We had 5 of those engineers that we have on here, but well, you can do anything you want to do, but you can't spend more than 300 hours. Well, now who's going to get those hours in order to accomplish this project? That's what this one is all about. It's kind of linked into the budget, say 300 hours, and it can be $30,000, and it can be these staff resources, and that basically becomes a constraining factor. I can't spend more than 300 hours. And then the next column, we addressed the spending limits. What's the budget? That's one of the triple constraints in projects. How much money? In this particular case, it was $100,000, 300 staff hours. So whatever that is, if it's all internal resources, or can we use 1099s or consultants to help us on this project? All those things need to be defined on day 1 with the sponsor and the manager reaching an agreement on all these constraints. Let's move to the next column and see that. Organizational constraints. So do we have enough people? People sometimes these days is the leading constraint. Maybe we just don't have enough resources internally to do this work. So maybe we're going to have to go to the market and get additional resources, either hiring, consultants, or 1099s. project priorities, what basically has to be done in order to get this project accomplished to a reasonable level. So the project priorities here are product management process, the organization structure. We got to drive innovation, resource management, adhere to the $100,000 budget, strategic alignment. Are we headed in the right direction with this project to help us accomplish a strategic objective, which means we're creating space between us and the competitors. We have a strategic advantage, which means we should be able to win more customers and get higher prices because we have a strategic advantage in the marketplace. Let's go to the next card. Is that we at the end of the cards?
We're at the end, but that I want to frame this for everybody. That's a lot to think about as a project manager, project anyone involved in project planning.
Yeah.
So what we've done here is we've created the list. We've provided suggested prompts here at the top of these lists that you can run. We've said recommended lists for you to select here, recommended lists. So each list will have a set of lists that we have recommended. And when you click on to the director of project planning, you will see these lists. So they won't be pre-selected for you. We've recommended them for you. So you can actually go through and choose lists that work for you based on your context, what you're trying to accomplish. And we've provided prompts in this space, but you have complete power to change and adjust the prompt. If you're not getting exactly the output that you're looking for, you can adjust the prompt. And you can also adjust the output of the prompt. Maybe your expertise says you need an environmental engineer too. So change it to level 2 instead of number 1. So you have a lot of what we're doing here. You're not trapped in this model. I want to make that very clear because I hear project managers and project planners, you often want to customize for your internal process. So this is one model that you can adjust across the board. And
I'd say that it's certainly complete, but it may be more complete than you actually need in order to accomplish the project that you've got in hand. Maybe it's a small, easy, repeatable project. You might not need all this. If it's large and complex, maybe all this adds value. And that's really up for you to decide, you and your sponsor. Because this is the negotiated document between the project manager and the sponsor. Because after this, we engage those resources to build our project plans, and then we go about executing it. And that's going to be in future webinars.
So before we move forward, does anyone have questions? Is anyone overwhelmed? Do you need clarity on anything?
I think we got
Has everyone's brain shut down?
What if I am overwhelmed, but not by this?
Okay. Go ahead and elaborate, Francis.
No, doing some coding on the side.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah, someone over here is causing problems. Nobody.
No, she's finding problems.
Finding problems, yes.
And we appreciate her for that.
So
while cursing her.
Yeah. So I guess the question for the audience is, do you all use charters? Do your charters look like this? Are they this comprehensive? Or are you, unfortunately, maybe one of those project managers that get assignments at the water cooler, at the coffee? You called to the office and it's all verbal, and then you got to go out and try to be successful based on some, shall we say, limited documentation, limited understanding. So I've been in all those spots in my life, and I prefer to have a more predictable outcome with a really good charter that's agreed to. So that's just me.
I see a question from Sajad. Could you elaborate on that a bit in terms of how you're using ChatGPT and how you'd like to incorporate your work into STS?
Yeah. In ChatGPT, because every thread is independent from other threads, I have multiple threads regarding different aspects of the project. For example, let's say hiring, let's say budgeting, whatever. it's a tedious job because the ChatGPT doesn't have a, let's say, comprehensive memory to remember the different threads related to one single project. So STS is providing this structure. However, I already have done much work in my current ChatGPT, which is not a structure. So I'm thinking, how can I import that work to the existing structure of STS and its project management tool? Is that a possibility, or I have to reinvent the wheel again and just go one by one, create different, let's say, parts and aspects and dimensions for my project?
Yeah,
So
what STS does, and I'll let Priya elaborate on this, is that it creates persistence. Because if you go into ChatGPT, it's basically a thread. You have to end up copying it, pasting it, putting it somewhere. Here, what STS is, it's incorporated persistence in these prompts and in the answers, and so it's there, and you can always change it, but it's there, and again, you can get to Perplexity, you can get to Google, you can get to other AI engines, and then you can reuse these templates for multiple projects. So I think there's a lot of power in this, but maybe is it Syed? Maybe
Yes, exactly.
you'll figure out how to use this even better than I've been able to work with Priya to come up with a really good approach, and it gets into the repository as a new and improved version of something like this. So
My problem is right now is migration from the, let's say, conventional ChatGPT to the way better structured system of STS. But the question is, am I ready to go through that migration ordeal? Just tons of stuff, different threads. I know that because your structure is different from my structure. It might not be just one click or two clicks. But if there would be a tool to facilitate that, I would have no hesitation to just migrate everything from ChatGPT to STS right now.
Francis, do you want to take that? Because I feel like it's a little bit technical. I mean, there is the basic element of copying and pasting. If you have core content that's relevant, you can copy and paste that core content to STS. And then you can work with the simple prompts to work with that core content, because there's a difference between the GPT outputs. You can replicate those GPT outputs very quickly in STS with very short prompts. So it's really about getting that front end. So if you can do that, that's one option. And then Francis, do you want to talk about a more complicated technical option?
No, I never talk about more complicated. Sometimes more straightforward, there are fewer steps, never more complicated.
Great.
I phrased that in the wrong way, but I meant technically complicated.
I guess it all depends on the content that you have. Is there something confidential in there? Do you think you could share your screen and show us how you're using ChatGPT? Because I have a few ideas on how to ease that transition, but depending on how much content that is and how many different prompts you're using and things like that, there might be different approach.
I may not be able to share that because of my screen right now, but later on we can look into that. However, I have multiple pages of coding, multiple pages of, let's say, financial planning. I have threads about hiring. Let's say all aspects of project management, is in a traditional way, right? And so, yes, I try to categorize them based on the subject as much as I could. The problem is each thread is 100% independent, unless you ask ChatGPT again and again, hey, ChatGPT, please recall all the memories of the current project and now answer this question, or now do this for me. And sometimes it gets messy.
It's interesting because I had someone asked me the question today that they asked a question to Perplexity, and Perplexity responded, "Oh, I cannot help you with that because the information is on another thread and I cannot reach across threads, right? So that's one of the things that STS makes very easy is we
Mhm,
call that content curation, where
mhm,
whenever you ask a question, you can specify, look at all the steps that I've already defined in
mhm.
on that board, and so you don't need to retype that every time. And
Yeah.
every time you make improvements to that reference board, like all your future prompts to that
Mhm,
content will also be there. Uh, and transferring ChatGPT threads to STS is very straightforward. There's nothing
mhm, mhm,
complicated to it.
mhm.
But if you I can imagine if you have hundreds of them, and I'm not sure, like, how do you do when you start a new project? Like, do you like duplicate all of these threads, like create new ones from by copying and pasting from the previous one, or
It, it
uh,
it depends. Sometimes I'm able to copy and paste the thread web link. Sometimes ChatGPT says, no, I cannot open an external link. And sometimes it
yeah,
does, which
yeah,
is still, kind of perplexes me that, I said, last time I did that and it worked. So, but now you're telling me that, you cannot do that. By the way, if
brave
I
new world
cannot,
of AI.
yes. And sometimes I ask ChatGPT, okay, give me a summary of this current thread so I can copy in and paste it in another thread. Okay. So now this is my best strategy to do that. But again, if I could have different threads, for example, using STS, uh, the essence of each different thread is kind of stored in a comprehensive, integrated, consolidated brain. That would make my life way easier. I don't need
Yep.
to explain or ask ChatGPT, hey, recall all your memories of my last project and then answer this question, or I can just do this for me.
Which is also like a part of the challenge. Even when ChatGPT complies with your request, it also gets confused because then there is sometimes too much content, and you would want to focus it on just like one aspect of it. Like take only like the HR component, like this HR thread, but only that section, at
Mhm.
the end, and not the entirety of the conversation. So
Exactly,
this is the
exactly.
kind of things that are easily done with
Mhm.
STS. So I'll drop my link here, and on the meantime, I think Holland had a comment also.
Yeah, Holland
Hi.
asked a question
Yeah,
about.
not really a question, just commenting on the depth of information that
Yeah.
we're able to generate out of a charter this way, which is really fantastic.
And Holland, for your purposes too, if this is too much detail, you can have fewer lists. You can have them completely aligned with your particular charter.
Hmm.
And if you want less content, so you'll notice part of our prompt says give us a maximum of 3 words or give us
Hmm.
50 words. If you just want 10 words, ask for 10 words and it'll adjust. And so you can find the sweet spot for the type of content that you need.
That's great.
Yeah. Um, and then we didn't share this with you. Charlie, did you want to add anything before I
Yeah,
talk
I was
about?
gonna say, save the board, create the asset, show them the report, because that's going to be, and then show them how they would use this template to redefine the content of that context and go through and say, okay, this is how you can do it for your project. And if those boards are not relevant, then just don't fill them in.
Yeah, okay. So what I will show you here, so essentially this is a full project charter that we've designed and developed, and this is sort of the project background. So we've now filled it out. You can see everything is filled out, and it's completely aligned with a particular project charter that we've designed. Sorry, I'm going to click here, and we've
Yeah.
called it Charlie's project management charter. I'm going to export it to an asset. I'm going to make sure I'm sharing my entire screen so you can see the whole process here. Okay, so I've clicked to export it to an asset. It says asset successfully exported. And then I just scroll to the bottom of my board here and I get a link. So when I click on this link, it's going to download an asset, and I will open this up here. And now the entire board is downloaded to an asset. And this output is completely aligned with the content of this board. If I could win the Zoom fight, you will see the alignment of this board. So we've got sponsor, sponsor, project manager, project scope, background, and every element, every list title is aligned with a field in this project charter. So you can, if you wanted to for your company, you could have your custom project charter that you use internal to your company. It can be branded. We can add it to STS and it will custom fill out the fields as you need them to do, as you need them to be filled out. So once you've gone through the process, you've run your prompts, you've customized your prompts, had a conversation with your core stakeholders to ensure everything is aligned, you're meeting your needs, you press a button and you're done. So it allows you to have that level of customization. And I'm going to show you a few little things. So we've sort of said you can customize a few things with this process. So what I'm going to do here, actually, I'm going to open up another template. Hold on a second. So the other thing we are able to do, and you will all have access to this template, you have access to this now. So when you click on create a board, you can click on template, and we have the project charter template from the webinar May 2022. So if I click that and click create a board, I have that board here at the bottom of my screen right there. And the same board that we just worked with, you will all have access to this right here. It's filled out. I will delete all the fields so it'll be blank. And you can test out your own project specifications in this section. So you can just delete this. You can add your own context and your own content. Now, Holland, for example, say you never, I don't know, you don't want to focus on success criteria. That's, let's say, assumptions and constraints. If this wasn't important for your project, you can click on this list, see how it's highlighted in blue there. And if I click delete, I can just delete this list. Say I have customer needs here, and I'm going to change it to customer require. So what you're going to see, if I have customer needs here, so if I click on customer needs, I have customer needs there. There it shows up. Now, if I delete that and call it customer requests, now I see customer requests. So those list titles that you see correspond with all of these checkboxes. So you can select the context that's appropriate to your question. You can write a custom prompt here. This is essentially a very complicated starter template, but you can completely customize it to your needs.
Yeah, you can simplify it to be more appropriate or meet your company standards. It's whatever. It's
Yeah.
very flexible, and I think it's a powerful way to do this early stage planning of what we call chartering.
All right. Do we have any other questions, or we
I
can?
think the key is kick the tires, play
Yeah.
with it, and then
And
ask questions about how do I do this? This is in my template. How do I create that? Well, we can show you. Priya can show you, or Ben can show you.
yeah, or Francis,
Francis can show you.
the technical elements. Yeah. So
Right.
you can go through, select some lists. If some people want to try this out right now, you can sign up at sts42.com and you will have access to the template. You can test it out on your own right now if you'd like to do that quickly. And if you want to ask us questions after doing a quick test, let us know. Otherwise, I believe, are we hosting a webinar next week, Ben, or the first week of June, right?
Yeah, next week we'll be in Web Summit in Vancouver, so we won't have a webinar this next week. We'll take the week off and come back the 5th of June.
Okay. So you'll have this template available until about the 5th or 6th of June. We'll leave it available to you. And then on that webinar on the 5th, you can ask any questions about this template. So it's not going to stay forever, but we will be adding other templates every few weeks during these webinars. So you'll have different custom templates to test out. And they'll only be available for 1 to 2 weeks. So if you're interested in grabbing it, make sure you do grab the template because it won't be there forever. Are there any other thoughts or questions before we wrap up here?
I wondered if it'd be useful, like talking about this when you're using this with your team, like actually collaborating. Just wanted to make sure everybody knows that your whole team or the team that you will work on to create the charter could be on the board at the same time. So as you're going through these questions, as you're like filling this board out, you can be working remotely with your team to make sure that it does actually fit your criteria and what you're looking for.
Yes. So Ben, do you want to give us a little demonstration and join the board and add something to it? So Ben, I can add the link here in the chat to make sure you're in the right space.
Okay, I need to be on your team, but yeah, sure.
Yeah. Oh, I'll add you to the team then. I'll show you how I'm going to add Ben to the team.
That should be a great opportunity too to show how you can put this in the webinar board too. So you've saved the board, and we
Yeah,
can add it to the webinar as well. I mean, if you want to have it there, or maybe it's just as in the templates, just fine.
sure. I can add it to the webinar space. Can you, so this is our webinar folder,
There you go. Everybody should have access to this. If, what,
2025, right, Ben?
yes.
Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a board here and add this board. Did I download the template? I don't
Yeah,
remember.
you did
But
hit save. Yes.
I'm gonna just add the template to this webinar folder. And so I went to the bottom. I'm gonna pop that open. Now Ben and I have access and anyone in this webinar folder. So if you've joined STS and Ben's added you to this webinar folder, everyone can participate on this template simultaneously. So I'll demonstrate what that looks like. This is me typing hello, Ben, and Ben could respond in this space. And Holland, do you have any questions?
At this point, no, I think
Yeah,
I was able to get in and grab the charter template.
I have a
Having some
question
fun.
for you guys. Like those of you that have joined us on the call, it's like when you're actually running your projects, when you're doing your project management, what are your like say task management tools that you're using after you do this particular step? You're making the plan here, but then where do you go?
So I will be embarrassed to say that in the organizations that I've been a part of, Excel has been the primary tool
Yeah.
for all of that. And
It's one
yes,
of our
and
top competitors.
Add it to keynotes.
right.
So what do you find?
I used to use Microsoft Project for, let's say bigger project management activities. But currently for my own startup, for my own project, yeah, pen and paper sometimes do the job, right? So again, I prefer to go as simple as possible. I don't entangle myself in very complex tools unless I have to. This is my approach. I might be wrong, but as long as it works for me, I have no problem with that. So my philosophy is simplicity unless otherwise.
I love that. What do you, and this is an open question too, what do you find the most challenging or cumbersome around project planning or project management that you're not receiving from the current tools that you're using?
The major hurdle or obstacle of, let's say, complexity is many of the systems, they are not smart enough. When you make a subtle change somewhere, they fail to reflect that kind of cascade effect to kind of update all other, let's say, project steps, right? So sometimes you have to go manually update all downstream activities, right? I know that, project management tools are supposed to do so, but sometimes they don't, right? So again, as a project manager, you always have to have a look and make sure that everything is updated. And well, there are lots of changes, many of them expected, many of them unexpected. So I was hoping that, for example, AI can, in a way, facilitate and enhance that. So when I, for example, say, okay, I'm gonna reduce my dev team from 4 to 3. So it changes all the, let's say, time estimate, deadlines, everything, right? The budgeting, everything, right? It looks like a small change, but the cascade of events will go, very, very bigger than what you think. So far, and maybe it's my shortcoming, I couldn't find something that reflects that in a way that I expect to keep that in its mind, and then generalize that and broaden that to the entire scope of the project.
So that would be a good thing to test out in STS because if you have things in separate lists, so you've noticed we've got the AIs here.
Mm-hmm.
If you only have budget in one column and timelines in one column, and then you adjust in FTE, but you
Mm-hmm.
don't run the budget aspect,
Mm-hmm.
the budget will stay the same.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't take something into context or you don't run the prompt, it won't change. So you will have control over that. So I'd love to hear what your experience is like running, testing this out, to do those types of things.
Sure.
Yeah. Any other challenges that you run into?
Well, another aspect that I'm sometimes have a bit of challenge with is for me, especially when you are in the R&D process, it's a kind of iterative thing. You initiate something and then you come up with some answers, and then you want to modify those answers. So you come back and then you update the various structure of your project, right? So you are continuously adding or dropping new features to the system, right?
Right.
And when you have too many of those changes, which is necessary for the creation phase, uh, then you see that your project tool management tool is not kind of catching up with you the way that, at least the way that I do that, because I iterate a lot. I'm at a phase that, I think, I brainstorm, I create, and then I may add a drop, features. Uh, Sometimes it makes it really messy. And the software is supposed to help me on that process cannot keep up with me, right?
Mhm.
So if what I'm looking for might be a bit too ideal, I'm looking for something which is enables me that I can be creative, but at the same time keep some structure. So it's a kind of, let's say, creative destruction, or I don't know how to call it, but I need both sides, the creation and destruction, and at the same time some level of structure. If a tool can provide that sweet spot for me, I would be super grateful.
I think that STS will do a lot of that for you, but we
Mhm.
want to keep getting your feedback, and your sort of recommendations based on how you work, because we'll be able to evolve this tool to address that. Because that's what we're hearing across the board is people want structure that they can break and customize
Mhm.
and do their
Mhm.
own way. And I'm
Mhm.
hearing that type of a story from you. Is that accurate?
Yes, I appreciate that for larger projects that you have, multiple people, and you have a specific amount of budget, you cannot make too much change. That's not reasonable. But at a phase that you're just planning things or dreaming things, you are still in the process of creation, right? More freedom, more liberty to mess up with the system and to change and to swap, add, and drop would be appreciated. Later on, when things are more crystallized, well, that much change may not be that great.
All
Yeah,
right.
so a couple of things I can react to that. So the very first thing before I started STS, I looked at a tool like Miro. You might be familiar with that. It's a
Yeah.
brainstorming tool, and they have this collection of great templates that you can pick from, right? And so I can do a SWOT analysis. I can do a fishbone. I can do a value map. There's all these fantastic templates. What I found out is that there was never one template that fit what I needed to do. And
Mhm.
worst case, like a good example is at one point I used the business model canvas, and then I realized that there was another template called the lean business model canvas, right? So it's just a different way of organizing the content. And I was endlessly frustrated because when when that happened, I had to start over, just as you mentioned earlier, right? So what I wanted is a tool that was understanding, not just providing templates. Anyone can do templates, but what I wanted was a smart template system, a system that allowed me to evolve as my understanding of my project evolves, so that I can reconfigure things, and the system would help me like adapt whatever I was building to where my thinking is going, and sometimes go back and forth and compare the pros and cons and all of that. So that's certainly one of the aspect, and really it's all the things that are preventing you from making the right decision. Like if you like, I've been a little bit, I'm going to say, triggered by you mentioned about big projects. Uh, Actually, big projects, very large projects, are the ones that need the most the tooling that STS is building, because you if you don't enact changes in the structure of the project just because it's too hard, it's because you don't have the right tool, because you should always make sure that, and there's element to change management. You need to make sure that everyone is on board, understand the impacts, and it's complicated. I get that it's hard, but the fact that it's hard doesn't mean that we don't need to do it, that it's not even more important to do it. So long answer, or a bit of a detour to tell you, yes, I 100% understand where you're coming from. That's why we're building, and that's how we are building STS. Like, not all of it is 100% how we want it to be, but every month, every week, sometimes we add new features that bring us closer and closer to that vision of being able to use STS and STS AI as a partner that really works with you and helps you do your best thinking, not the other way around.
Oh, and Francis, you reminded me new features. The one thing that we forgot to mention earlier is now if you start a prompt with Google or Perplexity or Claude, you can call on those other elements as well, or tools or search engines. I don't know what, they're not LLMs. There's a broader term. I haven't figured out what it is, if anyone knows.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you all have been following the news this week, but essentially, Google is no longer seeing itself as a search engine. It's an AI engine that does search, right? So it's kind of like, I'm happy I did not invest in Perplexity.
What you said there, Francis, they're AI engines. That's what we will call them.
Yeah, exactly. So AI services, if you want. So
Yeah.
everything is AI infused these days, but really the core is, are you working with someone that understands the challenges that are specific to project management? And I think if you work with STS, the answer is yes.
And yeah, we'd love to have everyone participate on webinars. If you have questions going forward, suggestions, requests, can we do this in STS? Could you do a webinar and build this and show us how to do that? We'd love to hear your feedback, because then we can customize this process so that you really get the value out of STS, and other project planners and strategists that you work with understand what's possible as well. So the more you help us, the more we can help you, is really what this comes down to. And Ben's giving me a time check.
We're at time. Perfect.
All right, Ben.
Make drop.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everybody.
everyone.